My partner's father is a misogynist, constantly making derogatory comments about women. He supports Trump. He says things about being homophobic. And he comments on people's bodies and weight quite a lot. My partner doesn't make these comments, but when his dad says these things, he also doesn't respond, and that's what bothers me.
For me, if I was in this situation, I think the very first thing I would do would be to have conversations with him to really drill down, okay, well, what is it that you think of women? What is it that you think of racism? What is it like, where do our values align? And it sounds like you actually aren't sure yet whether your values and your boyfriend's values are aligned. Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Life Uncut. I'm Laura.
I'm Brittany, and this is our Ask Uncut episode where you write in your deepest, darkest, burning questions. We do our damn best to answer them.
We certainly do. But first, can we just talk about Rata for one hot second? Rata.
I love her.
Hottest. Do you?
Do you know why? Because even when I don't love her, I find her interesting to watch. That's why I think I like her, because I disagree with so many things that she does and says, but I still love watching her.
I don't know if I disagree with things that she does and says. I understand the complexities around a lot of the conversations that have been had when she's, I don't know, well, let's not even get into it, in terms of her take on feminist issues, but it feels very choice feminism. Anyway, I don't care about that. What I care about is her haircut. I deeply care about her haircut. She has just been posting for the last 6 days on her TikTok around the worst haircut she's ever had. You would never think that someone with that much money, with that much access to the best of the best, could possibly be subjected to a bad haircut. It's beyond bad. It's horrific.
I think we need to break this down a little bit in case people haven't seen it. Rata has she's doing a series of videos on TikTok about the worst haircut she's ever had. So she hasn't named the person, but she's like, I've gone to this guy that cut my hair. So he's cut her bangs it literally starts from the nape of her neck. The bangs start from the back of her neck and go all the way over the front.
It's like,
and then
she
it's
looks like David Bowie. It's terrible.
It's like he was cutting her fringe and then he slipped on some hair on the ground and was like, chunk, and then he was like, oh, I better just do that to the other side and call it a choice.
Do you reckon that it's that, or do you reckon that she's kind of gone in being like, I want this edgy look. This is what I want. And so the hairdresser's gone, okay, that's what you asked for. That's what you want. I'm going to give you what you want. You're paying me. And then she's gone, this is the worst haircut I've ever had. I wonder whose fault it is. Did she ask for, that particular type of haircut and it just doesn't suit her?
I think it is quite hard for hairdressers because often people would describe what they want, but they don't use the right words. For example,
I just take a picture in of Kendall Jenner and I'm like, make me look like this.
I went in once and I was like, I took a photo and I was like, oh, I want to get some ashy highlights. And the woman was like, just so you know, there's nothing ashy about that reference photo. That is warm highlights. And I was like, cool. That's my problem.
That's what I mean.
I've done it wrong.
That's why it needs to be visual. You need to take a picture instead of going in and describing what you want.
Just please go and look at Rata's TikTok. It's like someone's cut steps into the fringe. When it's parted as a normal fringe, but when it's fully forward, it starts from the back of her part. It is the most aggressively long, full head of fringe that I've ever seen. It's amazing.
It's very 2010 MySpace era where the shaggy mullet kind of look was in, where it came over the front.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, she's still so hot.
Yeah,
she's still a supermodel. She could do anything to her hair and she would be amazing.
That's what's annoying because she's like, this is the worst haircut I've ever had, but I'm beautiful. Look at me.
I mean,
and she still looks hot. Imagine me with that haircut.
Yeah, I don't want to imagine that. Thanks.
Love harder, Keisha.
I know.
It's true because I just pictured, remember that time when you put my clip-on fringe, which is blonde? For anyone who doesn't know, I am almost white blonde hair. I have this clip-in fringe. I actually have one in right now. I love it. Laura put it on the front of her head, and because you have brown hair, it looked like a top deck chocolate
I also
bar.
look like David Bowie.
I feel like we all have to go through that phase of life where you have a terrible haircut. I remember when I just thought that this was the coolest haircut, and I'm mortified when I see it now. I ended up with the nickname Lego Man. I cut
less.
So
Say less. I already know what it looked like.
My hair was jet black. I had the darkest hair because I used to just dye it at home and it was just easier to get. It was called darkest brown, but it was basically black. And I cut a fringe that was straight and then I cut it into a straight bob.
You look like Lord Farquaad.
Yes, I looked like Lord Farquaad and it was terrible. And I was like, hot, edgy, fashion. And everyone was like, no, Lego man.
But also, Britt, every single person in their younger years has had a horrifying haircut. Like, that's just like a rite of passage. I also do deeply remember the time when it was like normal for people in their like early 20s, late teens to dye their hair. I also went through the home dyeing era. The problem with home dyes back then is that the color was so dense. Like, the color was the
Just
densest
thick and heavy.
thickest color. It just, it made your hair look like it was a 4D. There was so much color to it. But I had this one. So I had really long hair that I could almost sit on when I was little. My mum was so long. My mum was so proud about the fact that both my sister and I had this like long, beautiful hair. So mum would never let me get it cut. And I wanted a bob. Like, I wanted a bob so bad. And she was like, it's not happening. Anyway, she took me to the hairdresser and she got me a cut, but it was nowhere near short enough. It was only like to my bra strap. And because I had divorced parents and I could play them off against each other, I then went to my dad's house the next weekend and I said, oh, Dad, Mum said I could get my hair cut and need to get a trim. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, no worries. Took me into Just Cuts. And I sat in the chair at Just Cuts and my dad was like, oh, I'm going to go to the fishing shop. I'll come back in 20 minutes. And I was like, can I get really short bob? And the woman was like, I don't know if your dad said that's okay. And I was like, yeah, so fine.
How
so
short
fine.
did you go?
I had an undercut. I went from hair that I could almost sit on to having a shaved undercut.
Why?
And I thought it was so cool. I was like, fuck you, Mom.
Did you ask
Undercuts
did
are
you
cool.
did you ask for the undercut or was that an accidental shave?
I asked for the bob to be so short that the only way to cut it is to shave up to the bob. Like, you have to shave up to the undercut.
I remember the time where that was really cool too.
Yeah, it's like a 50-year-old woman's hairstyle. Or maybe like 60-year-old woman's hairstyle.
I
Yeah.
also used to
Or a 14-year-old boy's. Like, it's one of the two.
Laura had a fade.
I had a fade.
like Ben.
But I was only like 15. No, yeah, I was younger than that. I was like, no, I was probably like 12 or 11.
I also remember before I could dye my hair, I was allowed to dye my hair. Everyone was dyeing it at school and I was like, please, Mom. And she was like, you're not dyeing your hair. I was in year 6 and my older brothers were allowed to bleach their hair.
Well, that's a bit of a rough.
Well, they were older. They're in high school. It was different. They have short hair. I was in year 6, and I had brown hair. And I remember they had some dye at home, and I was like, I'll just dye a couple of strands, and she won't know. But I had no idea how it worked. So I got, you know how they used to, I hate the name, but they used to be called slut strips, like
Yeah,
slut strands.
Slut strands, yeah.
So I got these 2 slut strands of like and they were a centimeter, and I thought they were so thin. So I like wound the bleach down them, thinking that there would be such a subtle lit highlight. Anyway,
no one will notice.
it was like 2 centimeter strips of bleach down the front of my hair, and that's it. Mum was like, "What the hell have you done?" And I was like, "I don't know how it happened. I don't know. I don't know. It was so bad."
Oh,
that is
guys, I'm
absolutely
sure
gold.
everyone has a story about their terrible hair. We've all been there.
I have an update on something that I kind of accidentally discovered last Ask Uncut when you guys. I'm trying to think of the question that you were answering. I don't even remember which question it was, but I remember having this revelation where I kind of interjected and I was like, wait, hang on a second. Are you telling me that in a long-term relationship, you guys still make out just for the purpose of making out, not needing it to go anywhere, not having it always lead to sex or like, are you regularly doing this?
Yeah, I just asked Laura. I just said, "Do you guys still make out in the kitchen or
No,
whatever?"
your
Like,
exact words were, I can't imagine you two ever making out. And I was like, we still make out.
There's footage
without-
of it.
Sorry, I mean without sex. I mean, like, do you still just walk around and make out, have a session, and then continue on?
Well, sometimes when you've got kids, you can't have the sex straight after. So you make out and then
You're like, let's
well,
put that on pause.
that was nice. That's not going to lead to anything, is it?
See you in 2026. We'll finish that off.
It was kind of for me one of those moments where I just realized that the way that my reality exists is very different to some other people's because I could not tell you, hand on my heart, I couldn't tell you the last time I made out with my boyfriend when it didn't lead to sex.
That's
And
crazy.
I don't know if it's ever happened. Like,
I don't think it's crazy. I think there's a lot of people who would share that similarity, especially after long-term relationships. Like the makeout sessions turn into pecs and the makeout sessions turn into only when it's going to, time for more fun times.
And then people have sex without even kissing now.
Time for more fun times. What was that?
was-
Sex.
yeah, it was-
It's okay. I'm a grown up. I just have kids and sometimes I forget I'm allowed to speak like an adult on this podcast.
so we put a poll up, as you know we love to do. There were 7,000 people who responded to the poll and 36% of people are still making out in their long-term relationship without having it lead to anything.
Yes,
for you
queens.
guys.
Yes, they're my people.
I do feel comfort in the fact that not really, it almost always leads to sex is at 64%. So at least I'm in the majority. But I got a couple of messages from people and they were like, why would I make out with my husband? Ew.
That to me is the problem. That to me is the problem.
That's so funny.
I also got a message from Tara O, who we've had on the podcast before. You guys spoke with her about all things to do with like igniting the spark and all that kind of thing. And she was like, girlfriend, you need to be making out. And that was when I was kind of thinking like, I know you gave me homework.
I did give you a challenge.
I know, but I didn't do it because I felt uncomfortable.
You're like, because I was so frightened it would lead to sex.
How
And I
it-
didn't want to give him the wrong impression.
No, it can't. That was the point. It can't lead to sex. You have to go up, have a make out, and then walk away. Go back to work. The whole point was the challenge. Keisha, one job.
I'm sorry.
I'm not making you go to a sex club. I'm just asking you to kiss your
It's so
partner.
funny because I was the one when you guys spoke with Jessica, who owns a sex club in Sydney. I remember at the time, this is years ago, but I was the one who was like, "Yeah, okay, I'll go. Like this will be fun. This
And
will
I'm
be an
calling bullshit
experiment."
because you won't even kiss your partner.
I've become a prude.
No, you're like, I'd rather go to the sex club than kiss my boyfriend. That's the problem.
No, we don't want Top Lauren to hear that.
He doesn't listen. It's fine.
It's fine.
I still ask the question though, when does it change? Like when is that pivot in a long-term relationship where you go from, having like just the passionate makeouts to going, can't be bothered? Like when does it happen?
I don't
happens
think
for a lot of
there's
people, but I think it's a slow burn.
I actually think it happens to most people at some point. But I don't know if there's a specific day. I think it's a slow fade out.
It's a Tuesday.
It's one fine summer day. I don't think there's a point in time or like a 1 year in, 3 years in. I think it just happens.
Yeah.
This is why I'll never live with my partner, so I'll always make out with him.
It's
That's
such
the
a
point.
shame, isn't it?
Keep the makeouts alive.
All right, well, let's get into vibes and unsubscribes before we answer your questions. Britt, what is your vibe?
My vibe is on Apple TV. If you have Apple TV, it came out a couple of days ago, and it's called Number One on the Call Sheet. It's about the acting industry. It's about Hollywood, but it's a 2-part docuseries, but it's specifically on black actors in Hollywood. Episode 1 is just based around leading Hollywood black men. So I'm talking The Rock, Eddie Murphy, Kevin Hart, Morgan Freeman, Denzel Washington, Jamie Foxx, Will Smith, all of the people that you would associate being with the top leading men in Hollywood. The second episode is exactly the same thing, but leading black women. So like the Halle Berry, Viola Davis, Whoopi Goldberg, Cynthia and Erivo, Angela Bassett, you get the gist. So they've basically gone through and found people that are absolutely killing it in the acting industry in Hollywood. And they interview them. And they interviewed them on all of their individual stories about how they got to where they did, but also the challenges they faced being black in the industry, what they had to do to fight for a seat at the table, to be looked at, to be a leading person. So number one on the call sheet, what that actually means is if you are number one on your acting call sheet, it means you are the highest paid actor. It means you are the leading person. So some people don't know, but you get ranked. So there are, some of these actors have come out saying I was always number 12 or 13. Sometimes I didn't even get a name. It was like, this man, whatever. And it not only goes through how hard it was, it also, some of them found it really easy. So I think it was Eddie Murphy was saying, I'm in the minority. I had one audition my entire life.
Because he always just got cast.
For Saturday Night Live, and then it was just the easiest thing for him from there. But other people are talking about the struggles and how far we've got to come. But they also speak a lot about their personal life too. So The Rock is really honest about why his first marriage deteriorated. Will Smith talks a lot about where he went wrong with his daughter Willow Smith.
Interesting that they got so many like high-flying celebrities to be a part of it.
Every single leading black person, basically. So Apple TV, number one on the call sheet. I personally loved it. It's just 2 docuseries.
My vibe this week is I'm actually going to say it. It's one of the best podcast episodes I have ever listened to in my entire life. It is the recent episode of Diary of a CEO with Logan Ury, who is the behavioral scientist from Hinge. She's been on the podcast a bunch of times. Very coincidentally, her episode of Cloud came out on Dating and ADHD last Thursday.
Which was equally the best episode Keisha's ever listened to.
And so is Life Uncut's episodes of...
She was on Khloe Kardashian's podcast the week before, Diary of a CEO. And so I was like, wow, Logan, you're really... big guns. Cloud's the third one, the big one leading the world.
We had a first.
We've spoken to Logan quite a few times.
Yeah.
What makes this the best episode?
It was with Prof G, so Scott Galloway. You guys have heard me recommend his podcast a couple of times as well. He's the guy who I spoke about his podcast because I was like, he's a easy entry for me to the world of finance, and I just love the way that the two of them discuss this. The episode is called Masculinity Debate. Are dating apps creating incels? Lonely men are more dangerous than ever. This episode is really long. It's nearly 2.5 hours. It is basically a debate between Logan and Scott However, they agree on most things, but they have so many incredible statistics to back it up. And like listening to the episode, yes, it is a little bit alarming about what is going on in our world at the moment. This is obviously quite topical because there was recently this report published called Lost Boys, and it was basically all about what's going wrong with the generation of men that are coming through now and with the boys who are growing up. And Adolescence has obviously been the #1 TV show in the world. So this is a particularly interesting thing, I think, for a lot of people to try and examine the reasons that, you know, men are failing in society and the things that are causing for them to feel like they don't have a sense of purpose. And why are they finding these internet people to align with? Why can't they find dates? Why can't they have sex with people? And there was this really interesting part where Scott was talking about, you know, if a man doesn't live with a partner or have a long-term relationship by the time they're 30, they are 3 times more likely to lead down an avenue of substance abuse. And Logan's rebuttal to that was, okay, that might be a statistic, but like it's also not a woman's role to have to emotionally raise men. So like how do we intervene? And I just found it one of the most interesting and brilliant conversations. They are both so incredibly intelligent. And I think that this is an episode, not only did I feel as though I was like, wow, I'm so glad I now know these things, but if I was a parent of a boy, this is a must. It is an absolute must for you to listen to this.
But also the interesting thing about that as well, in terms of like men being more inclined if they've reached 30 and not had a relationship with a woman, I'd be interested to know what the return statistics of that are for women who reach 30 and haven't had a significant relationship with a man. It's like the patriarchy affects everyone, you know, negatively, but also I guess it's like almost that there should be this expectation of not pity, but like taking care of, responsibility for, and that just seems so misplaced.
Yeah, it's interesting because like it's something that we've spoken about within ourselves for a year or so, I think. You know, there are obviously a lot of problems that are happening with the rise of feminism and the rights that women have gained. A lot of men feel as though they don't have a purpose in the world anymore. You know, they go through a lot of statistics about when women earn more, when they're more educated, and like everything is on the up and up. And Scott is the first person to say that is brilliant. We are not saying that this needs to change, but we need to adapt other parts of society. How are we creating connection for men? How are we creating men's groups? How are we creating a sense of purpose? How are we redefining what masculinity means? How are we going to fix this problem? Because we've got all of these really massive issues at the moment, and he's not saying how are women going to fix it. He's the first person to say how are men going to fix this. But it's something that I think we all kind of need to be aware of so that we can work out ways that we are contributing to it. You know, there are so many statistics about dating and relationships in this where 80% of women will set their filters on dating apps to be 6 foot and above, but that's only 14% of adult men. And so they were talking about, you know, the top 10% of men on dating apps are getting 90% of the people swiping right on them or swiping
choices,
yes. You know, it was absolutely fascinating.
I mean, that's a stat that's said in Adolescence itself. He was like, you know, only 20% of I can't remember exactly what it was, but something around the lines of like only 20% of the men get like 80% of the women or something like that, you know, which is just.
But I don't know. I think that that's the same on the other side. I think there's a lot of women. We were talking about the other day, how to these mediocre men. So I don't know how I feel about the stats because we were talking about how do mediocre men have these ludicrously high standards and get these amazing women. Like we had this whole conversation about it, not on the podcast, so don't go back and look for that episode. It was just a conversation between friends.
Off the back of a Substack.
Yeah, it was off the back of a Substack. It was an interesting conversation to have, and maybe it's something that we do need to unpack more. I want to listen to that episode, and then maybe we can all unpack it because it sounds fascinating. But from what you've said, like I feel like I have a strong visceral reaction to some of the things you've said.
Yeah, I think maybe something that we could potentially unpack on a future episode is this idea of red pill men. It's a kind of a term that's being thrown around a bit in the culture, and it was thrown around in this episode, and that's why I ended up going and Googling it because I didn't completely understand, but I think we would all find it quite fascinating. And yeah, like I said, it's a really long one. It's on YouTube. It's on wherever you get your podcasts. It's the episode of Diary of a CEO, Masculinity Debate with Prof G, Scott Galloway and Logan Ury, and I cannot recommend it more.
Awesome.
I have an unsubscribe, which comes very infrequently, and it's something that we've been discussing here. I am unsubscribing from April Fool's jokes. And the reason why I'm unsubscribing this year is because I feel like maybe it's just me, maybe it was my algorithm, but the increase in influencers and people working in media who have jumped on the April Fool's bandwagon, and I just find it a little bit lame.
I hate it.
Sorry to anyone who works in media. That was not pointed at any specific person. I just saw a few of them and I was like, oh.
I mean, your husband did do one.
Yeah, I mean, that's pointed at him as well.
I was like, I'm unsubscribing my husband.
Do you know why I don't like it? Because I just feel like it's, in a way, I don't want to say lost its meaning because that's not right. It still has its meaning. I just don't like that yesterday, by the end of the day, I was so pissed off that every single thing I saw on every single platform, whether it was mainstream news, huge brands, small people, influencers, every single thing I saw, there was nothing that I saw that was real, but I thought it was. And by the end of the day, I was just angry. I was like, I'm just sick of the internet today.
See, I felt kind of different because I had seen so many and I instantly knew so many of them were April Fool's jokes. And maybe because we'd spoken about it in the morning, so I was very conscious that it was April Fool's. I just stopped engaging with social media that day because I was like, I'm not going to believe anything. Anything that seemed like slightly exceptional or was like an announcement or was a breakup post, or most of them are harmless and I don't have like any strong feelings. They're just kind of a bit annoying. I'm like, here we go again, another one. But there were a couple that I saw, one in particular. She is an influencer, but also an incredible entrepreneur who I follow online, based out of America. And she is, I don't want to give the handle away because I don't want to like start more of a pile on because it's already happening. But basically, she's a real advocate in this space for being childless by choice. Her and her husband talk about it all the time, that they've made really considered decisions around not wanting to have kids. She's very vocal in that space. And then posted about how her and her husband were having a baby. And a few people in the comments were obviously like, is this April Fool's? A lot of people were congratulating. And then I'd seen it and thought, if that's an April Fool's joke, that's a really bad one. Like that's like one thing, or
Like
one
you're
of
gonna get
many
cancer.
things you just don't joke about. And she posted a photo of herself with the caption saying, I fucked up. And it said it on the picture as well. And she was like, look, you know, for so many years I've been asked around whether I am or I'm not going to have children. People have so publicly inquired into my life and my choices around having kids. And I just never thought that the alternate was that there are so many women who want children and can't have them. And so making a joke out of this would be tone deaf. And I was just kind of in my, like, when I saw this, I was like, okay, appreciate the responsibility. Like, it's so great that people acknowledge that sometimes April Fool's jokes are not funny because they're not punching across, they're just punching down on people. I was like, but aren't we past the point where things like this could even be thought of as being a good idea for an April Fool's joke?
It does seem weird in 2025 that we're still doing the pregnancy jokes. Like, maybe it's just been the algorithms that we've watched over the years, because there's been many people the last 5-6 years that have made the mistake of doing that April Fool's joke, have learnt their lesson. And I felt like that was really public. I felt like by the time how open we are with the pregnancy discussions or the infertility discussions, and I don't say we as in us, I say we as in a society and online, you'd think people would have learnt by now that there are like a few no-go zones for April Fools, and that is absolutely like up there with the top of them.
Yeah. Obviously, brands are all jumping on board. It's definitely a big influencer thing at the moment, people who have social media profiles. I saw the increase this year than last year and years in the past. And I think that, you know, next year it's going to be something that we see more and more of. I just don't find them particularly amusing. And maybe I'm on my own on that. I'm happy to be a Grinch, but I just kind of was like, oh, I'm bored by this.
I completely agree. And I think that as technology advances with AI and the ability to create something that looks super real, they're going to get more and more extreme, and they're going to look more and more real. And like, I know that I'm probably taking this a little bit too seriously, but for me, looking at social media yesterday and how believable some of the things were, it was that reminder to myself that I'm like, wow, we actually can be fed so much bullshit.
Deceived,
and not
so
know.
easily.
Some brands did it and the jokes were funny. You know, I saw Shopo created a glow-in-the-dark dress for your friend that you always lose in the club so that you'll be able to find them. That's
Great.
funny. It's
Hilarious.
also in line with what they do. It doesn't hurt anybody, like you said.
Innocent.
And it's very much, like you said, I think the big part of that is it's in line with the brand. It's when people do things that's really rogue and outside of like what their core values are.
Or believable, like really believable in the wrong way. That's when I don't
and then
like
turn around and go, psych, that's not us anyway. It's like, but why? For what point? I like that one because I think it's very much in line. But yeah, I'm just not an April Fool's person. The end.
All right, well, let's get into the questions. Question number 1. I've freshly started dating again, but after being treated pretty poorly in my last relationship, I'm unfortunately a bit scared and always preemptively looking for reasons why a relationship won't work out, sometimes before we even have a first date. That, my friend, is called self-sabotage. One thing I find really strange is men who have quite public profiles on social media and are very into creating and curating photos and content. It's weird because the traits I am attracted to, which is like motivated, inspired, outgoing, active, tend to be the kind who post a lot on social media. So it does feel like something I might need to get over. But I wonder how Laura found navigating her relationship in the public eye at first, and if she ever felt the ick from any of Matt's posts when they originally started dating. Basically, she's saying she's got the ick from men that she's dating that are like influencers that are like, hey, can you take this photo of me here and I'm going to do this and I'm going to look away. And like the very curated Instagram influencer photos is what's giving her the ick.
Yeah, I guess well, firstly, I don't think Matt's Instagram is particularly curated. Like he's not really the type of person that's posting hot photos. If anything, it's like dumb, funny content. But he's had a real transition in his content because like, when we first started dating, he was more of your traditional influencer, I guess. We were both trying to figure out like what was Instagram to us as people who had never used it before but now had a social media following. And I think it's an interesting one because I feel like social media, we are very gendered with it. And it's exactly, I think that this is point and case, an affirmation of that. We're okay with women doing it, but we don't like men doing it. We're okay with women being influencers. We find it weird when men are influencers. We don't quite understand. And I don't mean this just as in like women having that perspective of men who post. Men also have that perspective of other men who post. And I honestly couldn't tell you the amount of times where like we've left a party or a dinner or Matt meeting new people and he's been like, it's so hard for me to explain to people what I do for a job. And so I always just fall back on the podcast and say, oh, I have a podcast called Two Dating Dads. You know, he doesn't make his majority income through the podcast. He makes his majority income as a content creator working alongside brands. But most people, especially other men, don't understand. They cannot wrap their head around a man doing that for an income. And I think it's because traditionally the world of social media has been very much reserved for women and how we use it. Did he give me the ick? No, he doesn't give me the ick at all. I actually think it's incredibly creative how he's able to use it. He doesn't care about like what people say. And if anything, he has very funny comebacks and witty responses to things when people write stuff that's quite mean. Matt never retaliates in a way that has venom. He always retaliates in a way that's very, very self-deprecating and really joking. And I think that that's such a beautiful quality because sometimes I react in a way that's like, hey, screw you. How dare you say that? But I think that this is something that you should get over. I mean, obviously there's a limit to it. There's some people that post every single part of their lives and they post things that are just incredibly cringe. We've all seen the person who's hogged the sunset. Maybe you've been on holidays.
Hogged the sunset.
No, I mean this. I remember being on holidays in Bali, sitting at a nice restaurant, and this one couple just took 400 photos of themselves, literally blocking everybody else's beautiful view of the sunset because they were taking social media content. And I was like, that is, I mean, it's so annoying. That is annoying.
I want to take away from
That would give me the ick.
Yeah, taking away from the fact, firstly, that the ick that you're getting is content creation. An ick is an ick. Whatever it is, if you get an ick from something, it's pretty hard to get over. So your ick is a guy that creates too much content. Firstly, if you can get over that, great. If you can't, don't date someone that is in content creation.
Yes.
That's what I want to say. But that I do feel you in a way. So I say that because sometimes you can't help it. But I remember, and I know that you guys remember, I was dating this guy a couple of years ago, very briefly.
Yeah, but his content was cringe.
But it was like, hang on, are we even talking about the same person?
Yes, we are.
But he was great, but he was he definitely had this life on social media that he was trying to present himself a certain way, which is, I don't have a problem with it, but I had the problem with how much it meant to him. But when I say how much it meant to him, it's because it was things like, I remember he would do really nice, lovely things for me, which was great. And he was a really nice person. But then, and I'll use the example of like, he sent me this beautiful big bunch of flowers and it was lovely. And then he came over and he was like, do you love them? And I was like, I love them. Thank you so much. They are stunning. It was something like 100, like it was 100 roses or something. It was huge. It would have cost him a lot. We hung out for a couple of hours and then he was like, are you going to post that? And that was the moment, literally, and I don't even know if he remembers it, but that was the moment in me where I was like, oh, your life isn't real. Like, you didn't actually want to give me those because you wanted to give me them. You wanted to make a moment that you could post on social media for and that was the moment where I was like, okay, cool. We have very different ideas around our lives and our private lives.
And you're like, and I'm also not ready to go public with you, so no.
And I was like, and I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, I might post them, but I'm not tagging you.
Do you know what this reminds me though of? That really good quote. There's a big difference between doing things in your life and posting it on social media versus doing things in your life so that you can post it on social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really different
Totally.
intention. And I think that's why you were like, oh, the intention here is really different.
I think it comes down to authenticity though, right? Like if you meet a guy and he's super outgoing and he's, you know, motivated, inspired, active, all these things that you mentioned that you like in someone, and he posts on social media, if he's his authentic version, I hate that word, but it's true. If he's authentically himself on social media and also is the same person in real life, then I don't think you'll get the ick, because I think that you'll be like, oh, it's so congruent with the person he is that it's kind of just like an extension of his personality. But if he's posting things and you look at it and you're like, oh my God, you're a fucking tryhard, like that's a very different perception. My only thing that I do want to say is like, it's so obvious that you're trying to pick apart and look for things that you don't like in someone. You even said, unfortunately, I'm a bit scared and always preemptively looking for reasons why a relationship won't work out, even before the first date. I do think that that's something that you probably have to recognize in yourself. And if you're getting the ick too easily, yes, it's easy for us to say, well, when you got the ick, you got the ick, but you can't get the ick about everything. And you do have to work on that if that's the case and power through it, I think.
Totally. But I also think it comes down to, in these situations, like, how much does it take over their life? Are you going somewhere and he's like, hey, this looks like it'd be a great post. Can you get a picture of me there? You get the picture and it's done. You get a picture of the food and it's done. Or is he the 400 person at the sunset photo? Is he the person that like...
The sunset hog.
I would get the ick 100% if my partner was like, can you take some photos of me here? And then came over and he was like, ew, take them better. Goes back. If this was going on for 45 minutes, I'd be like, this isn't the life I want to live. But if he's happy to get his content and be like, this would be cool. Let's make a great post. Let's do this. And then it's done. And then he doesn't sit there and look at his phone and edit his photos and edit the videos over dinner. And if it's not consuming his whole life, then yeah, get over it. But if it is...
It's interesting, isn't it, though? Because, like, that's what a lot of women do. Like, a lot of women do that for their social media profiles.
100%. But I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with that woman either. So if you're both two content creators that want to go take your photos and videos and then sit down at dinner and edit together, there's nothing wrong with that. But you both have to just be on board with it.
I think I'm a hypocrite with this because my boyfriend hasn't posted on Instagram since like 2021 or something.
That's hot.
And but this is what, whenever I say that to people, to other women, to other girls, they're like, oh, that's such a green flag. And I agree. And yet I'm here being like, post my outfits, post everything. And I realize that it's hypocritical because I have different standards for what I want in a partner to what I actually put out. But I will admit it really was something that made me attracted to him because I was like, cool, you don't care about that. You don't feel the need to get validation through people on Instagram. Like, must be nice.
Yeah.
I mean, you did ask one more question, and this is, does having an Instagram/TikTok presence imply anything about someone that I should avoid? I don't think so.
No.
I think a lot of people use social media now for many, many reasons. I think what we've established is that it's how they engage with their social media. I don't think that someone having, you know, a following or posting what they're doing in their day, so long as it doesn't consume their life, is a big deal. The only time when I would disagree with that is when it is their job. So like for Matt, it is his job. He spends a lot of time creating content for social media, but he gets paid to do so. And so at the same way that a lot of people spend time at their physical work, working a 9 to 5, he has allocated time for writing content, coming up with skits, filming skits. Like he has designated work hours that he does that for. And so I can't turn around and be like, oh God, he spends so much time on social media. I'm like, it's his job.
But it also doesn't imply anything having an Instagram and a TikTok. That's literally every single person. It's almost a red flag if someone doesn't. You're like, what are you hiding?
Oh, I don't know.
What do you got? But like having someone that has social media is absolutely not a red flag because it's every person. You're a minority if you don't have it.
Yeah. I agree. All right, question 2. I've been with my husband for 3 years. A couple of years ago, he opened up to me about enjoying prostate stimulation and told me he'd never told anyone or done it with any partner before. He said he wasn't comfortable doing it with me at the time. Now, a little while later, he told me he decided that he was ready to give it a crack. I was
Crack? Wrong word.
He was ready for me to put it
up the crack.
I was really happy that he felt comfortable and was really open to doing anything that made sex even better for him. He said he'd like to go to a sex shop to buy a toy, but I didn't push that. Last night, when we were having sex, he suddenly brought out quite a large dildo. I'm talking like 6 inches and a replica of a penis and balls. I was quite taken aback as there wasn't much warning, but I was still okay with him to use it while we had sex. Afterwards, he told me he went by himself to buy it a couple of weeks ago because he felt more comfortable going into a sex shop without me, and he was open about trying it out a couple of times by himself first. There is a lot I'd like to ask him about. Like, why would he select a dildo that is really phallic as opposed to like an anal plug or just a plain dildo? But even asking him about when he bought it made him really shy. And I don't want to undo any of the progress he's made to do something that I imagine would have been difficult for him. What would you do in this situation?
I don't think this situation has to be a big deal at all. Obviously, he's quite shy and reserved, but he's come out to you saying like, hey, I want to try something new, which I think is great. He has been open about the fact that he felt more comfortable buying it on his own. He's tried it out on his own. I also think that is okay. Like, it's okay for people to masturbate and do what they want in private. And maybe he wanted to make sure he liked it before he introduced it to you and had further conversations. Would I personally find it strange if my partner not wanted to try butt stuff? That's fine. But if my partner wanted to try it with a replica of a penis as opposed, like a big 6-inch, as opposed to starting with the butt plugs and smaller things, would I have questions? Absolutely. But it doesn't have to be negative questions and it doesn't have to be like accusatory. It's just a conversation. And you said you're curious. He's your husband. You can have those conversations. I'd just be saying, why did you go for this? Have you ever tried butt plugs first? Are there other things you want to try in this situation? Even if he's shy, that's not a reason to not have a conversation. You're married to the guy that has gone out and bought a 6-inch dick with balls. It's okay to ask. Like, it's okay. I don't think it's like...
I fully agree. I also think it's not an indicator of something to be worried about because like
No.
I think a lot of people listening or like the reading between the lines is like, oh, like does that indicate that maybe he's bisexual or that he likes, that he's maybe wanting to do other things? I think he just likes butt play and he probably, I mean, who knows? Maybe it's a fetish. Maybe it's something that he finds super attractive. Obviously he does. I think it's okay to ask questions. I think it's okay to be like, hey, it does feel a little bit like we went from 0 to 100. Is there any sort of like, one, what do you like? What don't you like? Is there a specific reason why this is more preferred for you or feels better for you? I think you can have those conversations because like if he's been comfortable enough to bring it to you, if he's been comfortable enough to try it and to talk about trying it, it does sound like he's been pretty damn open with you. And so as much as like you don't want to make him shy, there probably are questions that you feel a bit embarrassed or uncomfortable to ask as well. Because it does sound like he is being really open and honest. And I keep coming back to it, is this like fear that she must be feeling around like, oh, where did this come from? And I guess like maybe ask yourself, yes, you might have curiosities around some of the questions that you want to ask, but what are you going to do with the answers or the outcome? Like if he's like, oh yeah, I've been using butt plugs for the last 5 years, what difference is that going to make to you? Like, is that going to make you upset? Is that going to make you feel validated? Like, what will that do? Because I mean, even if he has or he hasn't been, I feel like now you know that that's something he wants to incorporate into his sex life. Like, is it a big deal for you? And I guess like only you can answer that question.
I don't think it has to be a big deal. I think it's just important to know if 3 years in the relationship, he's secretly been pleasuring himself in a way that you had no idea about. It's just information. Information is knowledge and power. And for me, he has told you that he enjoys it. It's not abnormal for a man to enjoy the prostate stimulation. Like that is very enjoyable for men.
Yeah, and I don't think it's that. I think that it's the reaction to what the object he's chosen. I
It's
think
the
that it's like,
phallicness.
I think it's like, okay, of all the things that you could choose, if you're into butt play, there is something that probably for her feels a bit intimidating by it being a replica of a penis.
Yes.
And there is far more implications in that probably makes her be like, okay, is this a conversation we need to have?
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like this question is circling.
Do you think it also could be that because it does seem like quite a jump, I think naturally you would have a bit of a question of like, okay, well, I didn't know about any of the steps that kind of happened in between here.
Yeah.
So is there other things that I don't know about?
Totally,
That maybe
yeah.
and I don't think you've been at all judgmental. I don't think that having that as a natural curiosity is a particularly judgmental thing. I think it's just quite a normal feeling to be like, oh, I've just found out this thing that I feel like is quite far down the line in terms of this compared to where I thought things were. Maybe there's other things I don't know about. So maybe asking those questions actually will validate you in the sense where it's just like, okay, now I feel a little bit more like there's less question marks around other things. And I'm not implying that he's been doing anything dodgy. It's just I can understand why you would feel a little bit confronted with that. I also think that if we flipped this, and let's say like a lot of women like to incorporate vibrators into the bedroom, but if you had said, in a while, I would like to incorporate a vibrator or something like that, and then all of a sudden you turned up however far in the future and you had a 12-inch vibrating huge phallic object, that would probably be intimidating to the other partner. You know, like I think that it's also based off of the type of toy. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. And we wouldn't judge the fact that maybe you'd use smaller vibrators on yourself. But I think that we have to be reasonable about
How do we get from A to Z?
yeah, and like what we're
Yep.
expecting the partner to react, you know? Like I would find that a bit of oh, okay, I just feel like I've gone from being, you know, in year 1 to being in year 12.
I've gone from year 1 to pegging him like a queen.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like I think the advancement of it is what would probably put me on the back foot a little bit, like, wow, okay, this kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely the size and the phallicness.
Yeah.
When there were other choices, that's the thing that's taken her by the surprise. She's known for years, 3 years, that he likes butt play. He's always said that, but he never wanted to bring it in. So I think she probably assumed butt play was a butt plug or something smaller. So when a big giant penis came out, she was like, just wasn't expecting it. So I think it's 100% okay for you to be like, hey, just wasn't expecting it. Let's chat about it. Like that's so fine. But let us know the aftermath
I
on
need
that
to
one.
fucking know. I need to know.
Okay, next
I
question.
need to know. Is this the biggest of his toys that he whipped out first? Imagine if there's more.
Can you
Imagine if
share?
that's him starting smaller. If he started from the bottom.
He was like, I did start. He's like, I did start little. That's my smallest one.
All right. How much should I take into account my partner's parents in my relationship? I love my partner and I feel like he is the one, but I'm concerned about his father, who he's very close with and we see often. My partner's father is a misogynist, constantly making derogatory comments about women. He supports Trump. He says things about being homophobic, and he comments on people's bodies and weight quite a lot. This is particularly triggering for me as I have struggled with an eating disorder in the past. My partner doesn't make these comments, but when his dad says these things, he also doesn't respond, and that's what bothers me. He never brings it up with me afterwards either, so I'm worried my partner might have similar views deep down because that's how he's been raised, but I'm scared to bring it up because he is so close to his dad. They're a big Greek family. I don't want to be offensive. Am I overthinking it? What should I do? What would you do?
This is a tricky one because, I mean, obviously you don't want to just rule out your boyfriend because his parent is problematic. But I think it's important to have conversations with your boyfriend to figure out if his views are the same, because then that will be a really key sign and a key indicator. I think there are a lot of people that are close to their parents, but they don't necessarily agree with their parents or agree with the things and the political views or the perspectives of their parents, even though they can love them and have a good relationship with them. So for me, if I was in this situation, I think the very first thing I would do would be to have conversations with him to really drill down, okay, well, what is it that you think of women? What is it that you think of racism? What is it like, where do our values align? And it sounds like you actually aren't sure yet whether your values and your boyfriend's values are aligned. I don't know how long you've been dating for. It may be an early relationship, and he might still be on best behavior with you because he might be trying to present himself as a version of himself that you will like. So that's why it's so important to have these conversations, especially after his dad has done things and said things and shown a version that you just don't like and don't accept. Definitely don't think that you should rule out being in a relationship with someone just because their parent sucks, you know, because we're not always a direct reflection of our parents.
I think you're overthinking. You've said, am I overthinking? You're absolutely overthinking whether you can have this chat to him about it. That's the number one thing you should chat about. If his dad says something horrific or derogatory or homophobic at the dinner table, you go home and you say, hey, what did you think when your dad said this? What do you think about that? That
Yeah.
is an absolutely baseline normal discussion for me. And I think if you're worried about being offensive, which you have said, then that's not the relationship for you. Because I wouldn't be in a relationship if my partner's family were making racist, homophobic jokes constantly and my partner agreed with those. You don't have to have a partner that goes up against his family. That is fine. But you need to know where he stands. Like, you don't want to cause a rift where he has to sit there and fight them at the dinner table. It might be something he's been battling for a long time. He knows he's going to disagree with them, so they just let it slide. That's fine. But you have to make sure that you align on those views or the relationship isn't going to go anywhere. You've said you think he's the one. You can't know he's the one if you haven't had the conversation, if your morals align yet. I truly believe that.
Yeah, and I also think, I know you say you don't want to make anything uncomfortable. I actually would question, and maybe it would be good to like have a little think about it. I question whether it's about making things uncomfortable or whether you're worried about getting an answer you don't like, because that's a very different response, right? So are you scared to bring this up in case your partner says, oh, you're overreacting, dad's great, like there's nothing, what he said is fine. Because that means you have to do something. That means you have to actually consider that maybe your values don't align. So that's going to be real uncomfortable for everyone because you'll have to take action. I really, and this is like not just for this question, this is for everyone, like don't avoid hard conversations that are going to get you to your end destination faster, because it's either going to mean your relationship is rock solid and you know that they're the one, you don't just think that they're the one, or it's going to show you that actually your values are not aligned and you're wasting time with someone who in 5 years, 6 years time, you're going to realize is misogynistic, supports people that you don't support, thinks it's okay to make jokes about people's bodies and weights when that's something that's really struggled and has been like really triggering for you. Like there's so many parts of this that I think like finding out sooner rather than later is really important. The other thing though is if your partner knows that eating disorders and conversations around weight is something that is triggering for you, if you've had that conversation with him, then I do think that that is something he probably should stand up to his dad about. And not in front of you, but just say, hey, dad, like this is a really tricky thing for you. If you can be a bit more sensitive about weight because it's something that's been like a really, really hard thing in her life, that is a considered response of a partner who cares about your feelings. And I think, you know, don't write off the relationship until you know, but don't be fearful of asking the questions that will allow you to really understand and get closer to your partner. I think it's really important. Okay, next question. How soon is too soon? I came out of a 6-year relationship with my ex. We ended on good terms as it was a mutually agreed thing and things weren't working out. He is definitely more upset about it than I am, though. I've known for over a year that we should end it, but was holding on hope that things would improve. Now, 1 month on from our breakup, I met someone who I've instantly clicked with, and I get the feeling he is the one. But is it too soon? Should I take more time to heal and move on? I was not expecting to find someone so soon, and I met this guy completely by accident. I had no intention of seeing anyone so soon. No one ever felt so perfect for me, though. But I'm really worried it's happening so fast after my breakup.
It's way too soon.
Oh, you never know.
Bullshit. It's, you know what I say? It is not too soon to date. No, that's fine. You can date the week after, especially like when you've checked out of this relationship earlier. But after 6 years with someone, you've just met someone and 1 month in, you're saying that they're the one, that is too soon. And now it is someone that has fallen in love with someone over a weekend. I will say that. I didn't say he was, but I didn't say he was the one after a week, and I didn't come out of a 6-year relationship. There are definitely some feelings that you may not have processed after a 6-year relationship.
Yeah.
And quite often we can hold on to something very quickly when it feels amazing. This would feel amazing. It's something new after being with someone for 6 years. It's something new. It's so early. There's chemistry, there's attraction, there's things that are going to feel, I imagine your last relationship the last few years probably felt a little bit dead, dry and boring. You checked out. It was long term.
Totally.
This is going to feel amazing. People are on their best behavior on the first month. Definitely the honeymoon stage. Chemistry can lie. We know that. Go forth. Date this person if you want to, but don't go and date them with the intention that they're going to be the one. That's what I would say. And I would just not lock yourself into something too soon. I definitely would try and hook up with some other people in the interim just to like get some stuff out of your system in case this person is the one, and then you're locked down for the rest of your life.
I just think slow it down.
Yeah,
You've said, is it moving too fast? Yes, pump the brakes. Pump the brakes. You're in control of the speed of this. You can go on 1 date a week or 1 date a fortnight, or, you know, I think it's very easy when you spent 6 years with someone and then not be alone at all to instantly replace them with someone else. Like it's almost the definition of monkey branching, just straight into the next exciting big thing that comes along.
Is it common?
I mean, a lot of people monkey branch. And in my experience, it doesn't work out well. It's very exciting for a short period of time. And then, you know, you haven't resolved or fixed the things that you wanted to fix, or the, you know, even necessarily figured out what's the right type of person for you. And you've just done 6 years in a relationship with someone who ended up not being the right person for you. That's a really long time.
And it's been 4 weeks. That's 28 days.
Yeah.
It's 28 days.
Yeah, I would say, and you've only been broken up for 4 weeks, which means you didn't meet him. You haven't even known him for 4 weeks. I would say if you're having feelings of like this person could be the one, to me, that's an alarm bell and that's a red flag. That's not an indicator that this is necessarily a good idea. I'm not saying don't explore it. It's really hard to like deny those excitement and the butterflies and everything else when you met someone new. Absolutely explore it. but explore it with your eyes wide open to what it could be. And also just slow it down. You don't need to go straight into a full-time relationship, which is something that we can often be guilty of doing when we've come out of a full-on relationship, because we only know how to operate in full monogamy and commitment. That's not how you have to be now. You don't know this person. You don't owe them anything. You can just calm it.
I also
Bring it down to
think
the dating level, not to the instant relationship level.
the one level.
Yeah, to the one level.
Yeah, I also think if you have said, quote, should I take more time to move on? That means that you haven't moved on yet. So the answer is yes. You don't need to be fully moved on and healed to date. Not just to go out and enjoy it, to hook up, have sex, have situationships. You can, I believe you can do that simultaneously. Sometimes it helps you to move on. But I think trying to get into a relationship with someone a couple of weeks after that you think is the one, if you haven't healed and moved on, that is a recipe for disaster. I do think you need to be ready for a proper relationship with somebody that you think is going to be your person forever.
Don't get me wrong. I know that there are people who have gotten out of a relationship, met someone really soon,
For
and then they're
sure.
with them for forever. Like, I mean, to be fair, I think my sister is kind of a version of that.
Of course it happens.
And it happens. And this could be the case, but it's going to be the case regardless of speed. Like, it'll be the case even if you slow things down or don't slow things down.
Yeah.
I just think, like, give yourself some buffer so that you're not going headfirst into something and then getting so deep and so caught up in the emotion of it that you can't make sensible decisions. And also, I mean, it's not like you owe your ex-partner anything. I know that you guys are obviously separated. You can do whatever you want. But like, do it with some kindness. Like, I don't know. I do think that there is a kind way of navigating post-breakup. And then there's a really selfish and hurtful way of navigating post-breakup. And I think like flaunting a new relationship 4 weeks after a 6-year long-term committed relationship would be incredibly hurtful. And so I would say do it all with kindness. You don't have to do that for forever, but like you're in like the red hot zone post-breakup.
You can't have been with him more than 2 or 3 weeks because it's only been a month since you broke up, then you met him.
Unless he was the reason that like the breakup actually
No,
kicked
'cause
into gear.
she said I wasn't expecting to find someone so soon after I met him completely by accident.
Okay.
You just, to say no one ever felt so perfect for me, you truly, I just don't care what anyone says. It is impossible to know someone wholeheartedly after 2 weeks. They're just not their honest version of themselves. That's not to say he is not the most incredible person, but you haven't gone through the process yet. You haven't seen how they argue. You haven't seen how they are with their family. You probably haven't got to the bottom to their morals or seen how they treat other people in their life. There are so many things that you don't know about a person. You can know enough to know the feeling is good and you're like, oh, there could definitely be something here. But I do reckon that you need to slow it down, continue to date him for sure. Like the feeling is there. That is absolutely fine. But just do it without the pressure and the expectation of him being the one.
Just go forth with caution, everybody. And that's it from us, guys. That's Ask Uncut. If you have any questions for Ask Uncut for next week, slide on into the DMs at Life Uncut Podcast on our Instagram. Go and follow the Instagram page as well. And also you can join the discussion group on Facebook.
And also I'm going to Italy to see Ben in 2 days' time. Woo!
How excited are you?
Yep. So next time you hear from me, guys, I'm going to be OS.
I can't wait for the updates. Brittany in Italy is coming to you next week. Anyway, guys, that's it from us.
Tell your mum, tell your dad, tell your dog, tell your friends, and share the love because
We love love.